The Himalayas hold a silence unlike anywhere else on Earth. It is not the absence of sound, but rather the presence of something older, something vast and patient. The wind moves through the peaks with a whisper that feels almost sacred, and the snow beneath each footstep compresses with a soft crunch that echoes only briefly before being swallowed by the enormity of the landscape. For the hiker making their way along the narrow ridge, this silence had become a companion over the past 3 days. It wrapped around them like a cloak, offering solitude and clarity in equal measure. The world below, with all its noise and urgency, felt impossibly distant. Up here, there was only the mountain, the sky, and the steady rhythm of breath meeting cold air. But then, cutting through that sacred quiet, came a sound that did not belong. It was faint at first, barely more than a tremor in the stillness, but it was unmistakably alive. A soft, high-pitched mewling drifted across the snow, fragile and insistent. The hiker stopped mid-step, breath catching in their chest. They turned slowly, scanning the white expanse around them. The sound came again, clearer now, and with it came an instinctive tightening in their throat. It was the sound of something small, something vulnerable, something that should not be alone in a place like this. The hiker moved carefully toward the source, boots crunching softly as they navigated the uneven terrain. Just beyond a frost-dusted boulder, partially hidden in the shadow of the rock, was a sight that made their heart clench with sudden, overwhelming tenderness. A snow leopard cub sat huddled against the stone, its tiny body trembling despite the thick gray-blue fur that covered it. The cub's coat was matted in places, dusted with ice crystals that clung to the delicate rosettes marking its fur. Its eyes, impossibly large and dark, were wide with a fear that seemed too heavy for such a small creature to carry. The cub mewled again, a sound so plaintive and desperate that it seemed to pierce the cold air itself. The hiker knelt slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. Their mind raced even as their body remained still. Snow leopards were elusive, solitary, and fiercely protective of their young. A cub this size, no more than a few months old, should never be alone. The mother should be nearby, watching from some hidden vantage point, ready to defend her offspring with lethal grace. But as the hiker scanned the surrounding cliffs and ridges, there was nothing. No movement, no shadow, no sign of the cub's mother. Only the wind and the snow and the small, shivering life before them. The cub's eyes locked onto the hiker's, and in that gaze was something that transcended species. It was not just fear, though fear was there in abundance. It was loneliness. It was the primal ache of being lost, of being cold, of being unbearably alone in a world too big and too harsh. The hiker felt their chest tighten further, a lump forming in their throat. They had read about snow leopards, had seen documentaries about their resilience and their ability to thrive in these impossible conditions, but none of that prepared them for the raw vulnerability of this moment, for the way this tiny creature seemed to be silently pleading for help. The cub took a tentative step forward, then another. Its movements were unsteady, paws sinking into the snow with each step. It paused, as if testing whether this strange, upright creature might pose a threat. But desperation, it seemed, outweighed caution. The cub moved closer, close enough now that the hiker could see the way its small chest rose and fell with rapid, shallow breaths. Close enough to see the frost clinging to its whiskers, the way its ears flicked nervously at every sound. Close enough to feel the weight of its trust, fragile and unearned, being placed in human hands. The hiker's mind warred with itself. Every instinct born of compassion screamed to scoop this tiny life into their arms, to shelter it from the cold, to offer warmth and safety. But they also knew the rules of the wild, the delicate balance that humans so often disrupted with the best of intentions. Interfering with wildlife, even to help, could do more harm than good.
Without hesitation this time, it pressed its cold nose into the hiker's palm, and the contact sent a shiver up their arm that had nothing to do with temperature. The hiker let their hand rest there, feeling the rapid puff of breath against their skin, feeling the slight tremble that ran through the cub's small body. They knew, with a certainty that bordered on grief, that this animal was too young to survive alone. The knowledge that wild animals belonged in the wild, that human interference was often more harmful than helpful, warred with the undeniable reality before them. This cub had no mother, no den, no source of food or warmth. It had only the instinct to follow, to trust, to cling to the one living thing that had not abandoned it. The hiker made a decision, not to take the cub, not to claim ownership or impose will, but simply to allow the following, to let this small creature make its own choice, and to honor that choice by moving slowly, by stopping often, by making the journey as manageable as possible for legs that were never meant to travel so far, so soon. They stood and resumed walking, and the cub followed. It was a slow procession, marked by frequent pauses. The hiker would take a dozen steps, then stop and look back. The cub would be there, sometimes closer, sometimes farther, but always moving forward, always following. The landscape around them shifted gradually as they descended. The sharp, wind-swept peaks gave way to gentler slopes, and the snow became less deep, less punishing. But the cold remained, and the cub's exhaustion became more evident with each passing hour. Its steps grew slower, less certain. It stumbled more often, and each time the hiker's heart clenched with worry. They found themselves talking softly, words carried away by the wind but offered nonetheless. Reassurances, encouragements, the kind of soothing sounds one might make to a frightened child. The cub's ears would flick toward the sound, and though it could not understand the words, perhaps it understood the tone. Perhaps it found some small comfort in the steady rhythm of a human voice breaking the silence. At one point, the hiker stopped at a relatively sheltered spot, a small outcropping of rock that blocked the worst of the wind. They sat down, back against the stone, and waited. The cub approached slowly, each step deliberate. When it reached the hiker, it did not stop at a cautious distance. It pressed itself against the hiker's leg, seeking warmth, seeking safety, seeking the presence of another living being. The hiker felt the small body trembling against them, felt the rapid beat of a tiny heart, and something inside them broke open. They had tried to maintain distance, to respect the boundary between human and wild, but in that moment, distance felt like cruelty. Carefully, slowly, the hiker reached down and rested a hand on the cub's back. The fur was thick but cold to the touch, and beneath it, the cub's body felt impossibly fragile. The cub did not pull away. Instead, it leaned into the touch, a soft rumble emanating from its chest. Not quite a purr, but close. A sound of relief, perhaps, or simply exhaustion finding a moment of rest. They sat there together, human and animal, two unlikely companions in a landscape that dwarfed them both. The wind continued its ancient song, and the mountains stood silent witness. And in that quiet moment, a bond formed. Not ownership, not possession, but something more honest, a recognition of need and the willingness to answer it, a fragile trust between two souls who, against all odds, had found each other in the vast, indifferent wilderness. The valley's edge came into view as the sun began its slow descent behind the western peaks, casting long shadows across the snow. The hiker felt a rush of relief so profound it nearly brought tears to their eyes. They had been walking for hours, the cub trailing behind with a determination that seemed to exceed its physical capacity. Every step had been a small victory, every pause a necessary mercy. The hiker had long since abandoned any pretense of objectivity. This was no longer about observing wildlife from a respectful distance. This was about survival, and the cub's survival had become inextricably linked to the hiker's own sense of purpose. At the tree line, Where the harsh, open slopes gave way to the first scattered pines, the hikers stopped and pulled out their satellite phone. Service was sparse in these mountains, but here, at the lower elevation, there was a chance. They had thought about this moment for the past several hours, rehearsing what they would say, how they would explain. The phone crackled to life, and after a few tense moments, a connection was established. The hikers spoke quickly, their voice tight with urgency and emotion. They explained the situation as clearly as they could. A snow leopard cub, alone, too young to survive, following them down the mountain. They needed help. They needed someone who understood these animals, who could provide the care this small life so desperately needed.